Hopefully we remember hearing about the Pythagorean theorem. We've heard these words before. Hold on one second. Okay. Hopefully we've heard these words before, and hopefully we remember it being a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So a couple things before we dive into the Pythagorean theorem that I want to go over are the fact that the Pythagorean theorem only works for right triangles. So right triangles are triangles that have one angle with this little square in it, meaning that it's a 90-degree angle. If it's not a right triangle, we cannot use the Pythagorean theorem. Another thing that we have to focus on is what sides are A, B, and C. So C is by itself. That makes C different than A and B. C is always going to be the hypotenuse. This is a funny word for the longest side, and the longest side is always across from where the right angle is. A and B are the legs of the triangle, okay? If I call this one A and this one B, that's fine. If you switch them, that's fine. It doesn't matter. A and B are interchangeable. But the most important thing is C has to be the hypotenuse. It's the one across from the right angle, okay? When it comes to using the Pythagorean theorem, what we're going to use it for is solving for a missing side length, okay? So I'll give you 2 of the 3 sides, and you have to find the third one. This is going to come about in 2 different ways. You're either going to have to find the hypotenuse, or you're going to have to find one of the 2 legs. And you always need 2 out of the 3 pieces of information in order to do this. So I'm going to show you guys how to do this nice and easy. I'm going to go through 4 problems where we're solving 2 of them for the hypotenuse, 2 of them for the one of the other legs. All right, so example 1, we're going to start by solving for the hypotenuse, okay? So I'm going to give you a triangle. Let's make it this way this time. It's a right triangle, we can tell because we have a right angle right here. And let's say that we have 3 feet here, 4 feet here, and we don't know this side. Well, the first thing we have to determine is what side we don't know, and we don't know the hypotenuse, which means that we don't know C. We don't know the hypotenuse, we can tell because it's across from the 90-degree angle. I can draw an arrow to it, and it passes through the middle of the triangle. So we don't know C, but we do know A, and we do know B. So all we're going to do is we're going to plug in the 2 numbers that we do know and solve for the 1 number that we don't know, okay? So remember, these are just pluses and squares, right? So square means the number times itself. So we've got A squared plus B squared, so A is 4, B is 3, and we don't know C. So I replaced A with 4 from here, B with 3 from here, and we don't know C, so it stays as a variable. 4 squared is 4 times 4, which is 16. 3 squared is 3 times 3, which is 9. Now we got 2 numbers next to each other. We can put them together. 16 plus 9 is 25. Now we know what C squared is, but we don't want to know what C squared is. We want to know what C is. So we're going to have to do something called the square root. Square root undoes squaring, so it gets rid of the squared part. Now in order to do this, I'm going to do this on an iPhone. So if you have an iPhone, you can follow the exact steps I do. If not, it's the same type of button, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to do 25, and we're going to take the square root of it so that we know what just C is. That's going to be on an iPhone. This button right here says the second root. And when we do that, we get C equals 5. Now, we need some units. Our original units were feet. So our final units will be feet. Okay? So all we're doing is squaring the 2 legs, adding them together, and then take the square root to get what just C is, not C squared. We don't want to know what C squared is. We want to know what C is, okay? We're going to run through 1 more problem where we're solving for the hypotenuse, and then we're going to do 2 where we're solving for a leg, because there's 1 extra step when solving for a leg, okay? This one, I'm going to make the number not so nice. Normally, when we take square roots, there's going to be a lot of times where the answer that we get is a decimal and not an integer like we just had. We just had 5 as our answer, okay? So let's make this one 7 inches, this one 6 inches, and again, we don't know the hypotenuse. We can tell it's the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. It's the longest side, okay? So we don't know C. We know A, and we know B. So let's plug in the 2 that we know and get the 1 that we don't know. So A is 6, so we've got 6 squared. B is 7, so 7 squared. And we don't know C. Okay? Simplifying these 2 squareds, we got 6 squared, that's 6 times 6, which is 36. 7 squared is 7 times 7, which is 49. Okay, now we got to add these 2 numbers together, and those are pretty big numbers, so that's what our calculator's for. We got 36 plus 49 to get 85. Now we have what C squared is. Now we're going to do that last step that we had to do. Every single time we use the Pythagorean theorem, we're going to have to do this last step. So we're going to have to take the square root of 85. So I've got 85. I take the square root of it, and I get this gross decimal. But luckily, we know how to round. 9.22. We round up because after the 1 is a 9. Original units were inches, so our final units are inches. So again, we square the 2 legs, add them together, take the square root. Okay, any questions on finding the length of the hypotenuse versus what we're about to do? Guys, can we try not to be silly in the chat, please? All right, if we're good to go now, we're gonna add in 1 extra step. Okay. So this is an example where we have the hypotenuse, but we don't have one of the legs. So let's draw our right triangle, and I'm trying to draw them different every time so that you guys see all different orientations of these guys because they just exist however. Let's have a hypotenuse of 10 miles here. Okay, and let's have one length of 8 miles. We want to know this missing leg. This one's different because this time we have our hypotenuse. So we have C, we have A, we don't have B. So B is going to be our variable that we don't know yet. So we've got A squared, we don't know B, and we have C. So 8 squared, that's 8 times 8. When you type that in your calculator, if you don't know, it's 64. 10 squared is 10 times 10, that's 100. Okay, now B is not by itself. In the other examples, C was by itself, but B is not yet by itself. So we got to get it by itself by moving this guy away from it. Since they're added together, we're going to move the 64 by subtracting it. That's that 1 extra step that we didn't have to do in the last one. So we move the 64 over by subtracting it. And now we have B by itself, and we just have to do 100 minus 64. Type that in your calculator, we get 36. Now this right here looks like the last step from the other 2 problems where we have B squared equals a number. But again, we don't want B squared, we want B. So that's where we need our calculator again. So we're gonna do 36 and we're gonna take the square root of it. So we get B equals 6. Now our original units were miles, so our final units are miles. So our missing side here is 6 miles. Okay, this is a big triangle. This would be like on a map. Okay, we're gonna do one more like this with that extra step of subtraction thrown in. Okay, but it's the same process. We plug in our numbers we have, move over the number so the letter is by itself, and then take the square root. Let's do one more. All right, let's make this one 12 centimeters. We can do metric. Let's make this one 6 centimeters, and we don't know this side. So first thing we check is we do have the hypotenuse, so this one's C. We have 1 leg, we're missing 1 leg. So we're gonna plug in the numbers that we have. So we have A, so A squared. We don't have B, and we do have C. In our handy dandy calculator, 6 squared is 6 times 6, that's 36. Oops, this shouldn't be a plus, this should be an equal, I'm sorry guys, okay? And then in our handy dandy calculator, 12 times 12 is 144, okay? So we gotta get B by itself first, because now B has a number attached to it. Just like before, we're always gonna subtract the other number away, okay? I'm gonna just move this party up here. Yes?
Will we be able to work on this next week in your class?
I'm going to go over the answers to your work, but we'll see where we're at. All right, 144 minus 36, so that we know what it's equal to over here. And remember, our last step is always the same last step. We got to get rid of the squared by square rooting. And we have a decimal again. We round to 10.39. And we started with centimeters, so we finish with centimeters.
Ms. Whitehill, would you mind showing us on your calculator what you press when you press the square root button?
My best, yes. So it looks like, I don't know if it'll focus. I'll just draw what it looks like.
Okay, perfect.
So depending on the calculator you have, it could look like a couple of things. On an iPhone, the button that you press looks like this. Okay, so this is for an iPhone. I'm not sure about other like phone calculators. On a regular calculator that you might have around your house, it usually just looks like this. So it's going to be one of these two buttons for the square root.
Miss, you have office hours on Friday, right?
I don't normally, but I can if you need me to.
I'll come to it on Friday because this is really confusing.
Okay. Any questions on this button, guys?